So our video is about deposits, and I couldn't think of what better way to start it than by talking about a project I just had done and a video you're going to be seeing about an upgrade I had done to my house, which ended up being on my electrical system and dealt with my purchase of an EV. But I had to put down deposits, and we all put down deposits at times. And a lot of it comes down to how do you stay safe when you put down deposits. And sometimes deposits can be pretty large. In this video, we go through the different types of deposits, where they go, and what you can do to protect yourself, because nobody wants to be in the position where they put down a large sum of money and they lose it. And there's different types of deposits. I guess the largest one for most people will be if they buy a home. And then there's those deposits for smaller things. But in each case, no one wants to lose money. So we're going to go through the different types of deposits and what you can do to protect yourself, and the different types of protection that you may hear out there and whether or not they're real. Because the one thing that's always certain is anyone who takes your money is always going to tell you you're safe. And that may or may not be true. So stick around. And if you find these videos helpful, subscribe and ring the bell so you hear about them. But this is going to be about deposits. We're going to talk about it when you buy a house, maybe when you buy a car, have improvements done on a home. Maybe you're just ordering something from a store. We'll talk about credit cards, using cash. Lots of different ways to do it. The payment forms, different products, and how it can help you. So stay tuned. Small Biz Reorg, we're here to help. Hello, Small Biz Reorg. We're back, and today's topic is deposits. You hear about them all the time. You probably put them down for various things, and you talk about them. Security deposits. I guess the big one is when somebody buys real estate, and that money is put into escrow. And what is an escrow? Well, generally, it's money that's set aside, and you may have heard of an escrow agreement. An escrow agreement is actually a contract that's signed by the parties, and the money is actually segregated into a separate account, and that money's earmarked, and it is very well protected. But let's talk about other types of deposits. We're going to go through them because this may be one of the least understood areas of the law. And remember, this is not legal advice. For that, you need to go to your own lawyer. So where are deposits given? Well, hotels, resorts, vacation rentals. Here's a big one. You're going to rent that house for a week or a month, and somebody asks you for a deposit, and you give it to them. What happens if you cancel? Or there's a dispute as to whether or not you can get it, or you get there and it's not what you expected. Can you get the deposit back? What are your rights? Travel agencies for a tour or cruise. Weddings. Here's a big one. For the wedding dress, the wedding planner, the hall, the catering hall, the venue. Real estate, rental properties, rental purchases. Professional services. Big disputes. You hire a builder. The builder doesn't do what they say they're going to do, or they don't show up at all, and they've got your money. What happens to that money? Photographers and videographers. Another place where deposits are given. Legal services, lawyers, retainers, or advance payment of fees. Car dealerships and rental cars. Healthcare. A little bit less common here, but you do hear about it. Private clinics. Fitness trainers and coaches. Advance payment for services. Pay for 10 classes up front and get a discount. Who hasn't done that? What happens if they go out of business? Custom orders. All the time. They don't make the order unless you pay for it. High value items. Jewelry, electronics. You want to get that special something. Limited supply. Got to pay for it up front. May not come for 6 months. What happens if the store goes out of business? Private tutors and training programs. Again, what happens if they don't show up? Especially if you paid in cash or by check. DJs, bands, those personal services where you've got to put the money up front. Ticketed events, equipment rentals, tool and party rentals. Let's look at exactly what they are, and let's talk about the most common deposit of all, a bank deposit. So with the bank, what do you think you really have when you put money into a bank? I mean, most people think of it as their money goes into the bank. They have a right to get that money back. because the money's there. But remember one of those movies that probably everybody's seen? The holiday season comes around. Oh, come on, you know what it is. It's a Wonderful Life. There it is. Old George Bailey running down the street. There's a run on the bank, and he says it. The money's not here. Well, that's right. The money's really not there because there are two types of deposits, a general deposit and a special deposit. And that general deposit means you are in a debtor-creditor relationship with the bank. People don't understand. That deposit doesn't give you a right to get that money back. You're a creditor of the bank. Kind of strange, huh? Everybody has this feeling that they have the right to get their money. That's how you refer to it. It's your money. Well, actually, no. You're trusting the bank will pay you back. Okay. Well, not really. You're trusting the bank will pay you back or the federal government will pay you back if it's a federally insured bank. And at least in the United States, most people are banking with federally insured banks, except for, remember all those cryptocurrency cases that came around that went into bankruptcy and everybody went to them because they could get those high returns? Well, all of a sudden, those cryptocurrency cases had the word currency in them, but they weren't really currencies. And those high returns were coming about because those currencies weren't insured and they weren't currencies. And the returns came because they carried risk. And some of them actually got a lot of what they expected back, and others didn't, and they lost a lot. So as a general rule, with return comes risk. I think we all knew that already. As we look at this, what can we do and what should we know about this? What does it mean to give someone a deposit? Well, generally, it's an advance or an advance payment, unless it's in a bank where it's really an exchange of funds to get interest back or a return back on it. And what are we looking for? Well, you're securing a purchase. Generally, you should have a written agreement. And most state laws are going to cover this, and talk to your lawyer about the laws where you are and what your rights are to get that deposit back. And if you find this helpful, go down and subscribe, because this can save you a lot of money. And ring the bell and find out when we have a new episode. Let's talk about private sales. You're doing a sale between you and an individual. No broker involved, no lawyers involved. And you just decide you're going to put a deposit down. Well, if there's a broker or a lawyer, there's probably going to be a title company, or at least the lawyer can put funds in escrow. When you hand that money over, that money's at risk. You have to understand that unless you have some way to secure it with a third party holding it and something like an escrow agreement, or what a lawyer would do is hold it in escrow, you just turned over funds that may be very difficult to get back. And we hear all the time about handshake deals, but remember one of my favorite sayings, an oral contract isn't worth the paper it's not written on. So if you are doing something like that in a private deal, I would think twice. And your deposit should be subject to a written contract, because there are laws in every state governing what can be done by oral contracts, and you may not be protected. Again, you need to consult an attorney to cover these things, especially if it's a real estate transaction. So be very, very careful with putting money down without having it covered by A, a written contract, and B, those funds being secured in some way so that if that contract doesn't close, you can get the funds back. What about if you're buying a car? Well, here the laws get very, very interesting if it's a dealer. If it's a dealer, you may have state laws that protect you. Depends on the state you're in. If that dealer goes out of business, there may be protection. But again, you're going to have to look at the state you're in. Every state has different laws. But for the most part, there may be protection for you, because nobody's going to sell you a car without putting some money down up front. Also, it's usually pretty fast. Generally, you don't put a lot of money down and then wait for a long period of time, unless it's a very hot car or specialized and you're ordering it custom from the factory. Wedding dresses. Here, there are a number of cases out there. We can go back to the 1970s and pull forward 1990s, 2000s. Morgan and Blay Limited versus Victoria Group is one that I took a look at. There's cases about wedding venues that have been going on over a long period of time. Morgan and Blay is one where the court actually stepped in and got creative to allow weddings to continue in the venue using some extremely creative interpretations as to how funds were distributed. You can't count on that, but in that particular case, it did happen that they had a very friendly judge. The court was concerned about ensuring that the scheduled weddings could go forward. The court determined that the fees were reasonable but did not want the fee award to be a judgment because it did not want the creditors to recover fees from wedding deposits by filing citations against the debtor or third-party citation to discover assets on the bank. So you had a judge that was very concerned with the equities of the case. You can't count on every case going that way, and there's a number of cases that went the other way. There are also horrible stories of situations where wedding dresses were lost or destroyed, where the shop owner suffered financial distress and went out of business. And through no fault of the owner, just a downturn in the economy. I won't mention the name of the owner, but the store was mobbed by a number of brides, ransacked, and wedding dresses were taken out of the store. Now, that owner wasn't going to be able to fill all the orders anyway. It just turned into a very, very bad situation. It seems like weddings are an area where putting a deposit down in particular is rife with risk. How do you protect yourself? Credit cards. Most credit cards have guarantees on them. It may take a while to get the guarantee to kick in and get your money back, but most credit cards do have guarantees. If you pay with cash, there is no guarantee. There is no better choice than the credit card on situations like this. Banks now generally have fraud protection. However, in a situation where the counterparty goes bankrupt, that's not going to help you. It's not a fraud. While your bank may tell you they have you protected and they're looking after you and they have this great fraud protection, I wouldn't count on it. Your better shot is probably the credit card. It may or may not cover this type of situation, but it's much more likely it will than your bank stepping in and covering you. What you do if somebody like your landscaper who wants to be paid by check or cash and doesn't want a credit card doesn't show up, your options are pretty straightforward. You have the courts. You have the small claims court. If the number's too high, you probably have a local court, a local civil court, or some type of court like that. Do you need a lawyer? That's going to be a personal choice. If you're comfortable going to small claims court, go for it. If the number's larger and you feel you need a lawyer, there are local lawyers that handle this type of action. Go meet with one or two or three of them. Find somebody who you're comfortable with. Get them involved. It depends on the amount, depends on the complexity, depends on the facts. Decide what's right for you and make the decision. Also see what their fees are going to be. But each of these decisions you have to make. Look at how much money is at stake. Look at what the fees are going to be to recover it. But when we talk about deposits, there's a lot at stake here, and it can get complicated. Remember, there's a lot here. There's a lot to unpack. But when you put it up, if you can use a credit card, this is an area where you probably want to use the credit card. Not all credit cards are created equal. Take a look at the protections they're offering you. Those extra protections, maybe it's worth paying the annual fee. That's it for this episode. Small Biz Reorg, we're here to help. Subscribe or ring the bell.